And we found that just a few times a day, 10 minutes a day for 4 days, just elevating your emotional state will strengthen your immune system by more than 50%. We have the science to prove it. We've measured genetic changes. We've measured 7,500 different gene regulations, and our students have changed their genetic expression in 4 days. Genes that downregulate tumors and cancer growth, genes that are responsible for neurogenesis, not just making new connections, but the growth of new neurons in response to novel experiences and learning. The gene that stimulates or downregulates oxidative stress and begins to cause the body to move back into balance, anti-cancer, anti-aging, anti-heart disease, anti-stroke, anti-neurodegenerative. The gene that activates stem cells to go to damaged tissues and repair them. The gene that activates microtubules. The microtubules are the skeletal structures of the cell that vibrate and emit light, coherent light and information. And when cells are diseased or out of balance, those different harmonics are causing the cells to emit different frequencies, and the frequencies can't carry the information, and that's what causes the cells to begin to break down. Well, we now know that the microtubules, the gene when the microtubule gets signaled, that they're resonating at a greater frequency. And so our most recent research was measuring telomere lengths, and telomeres are the little DNA shoestrings that every time a cell divides, it gives up a little of that shoestring, and so the body begins to biologically age. So my question was, could we reverse that? And so we randomly selected 32 people. We asked them to do meditations for 5 to 7 days for 60 days. And 74% of those people had a change for the better in their telomere length. We had 40% have a significant change, and we had 23% have a dramatic change. In other words, they got a certain percentage of their life back. The telomeres were actually lengthening. And one lady, we measured the telomeres at the beginning of the event. 4 days later, we measured the telomeres, and we measured the telomeres 60 days later. And the scientist said to me, you're not going to see any changes in telomeres 4 days later, because telomeres, as I understand, it's like hair or fingernails. They take time to grow. But I said to the scientist, well, we're witnessing people get their hearing back in one meditation.
Really?
Well, not once, not twice, not 3 times. We have people with skin rashes come out of a meditation and the skin rash is gone. And they're getting a biological upgrade. So I said, well, if it's happening in no time, it's not a Newtonian phenomenon. It's not matter changing matter. Like, we're talking about energy changing matter, which is a quantum phenomenon. And I said, if that's happening, is it possible that their telomeres could lengthen in a very short amount of time? And he paused for a long time, and then he said, I think it is possible. I said, well, I'm willing to spend the money to see if it's true. And we had one lady who lengthened her telomeres in 4 days, which is really, really significant.
Wow.
So anyway, I gathered all this data, and I wrote a book called You Are the Placebo, Making Your Mind Matter. And I had thought, well, hell, if you understand the science of the placebo, giving someone a sugar pill or a saline injection or performing some false surgery or procedure, a certain percentage of those people will accept, believe, and surrender to the thought that they're getting the real substance or treatment, and they begin to program their autonomic nervous system to make the exact pharmacy of chemicals equal to the substance they think they're taking. Now, that's not light dinner conversation. That means then that pill, which is an inert substance, is a symbol that represents a possibility in the quantum field. And they begin to think about that possibility called getting well. And a certain percentage of those people will begin to feel optimistic, enthusiastic, excited, inspired, and they're combining a clear intention with an elevated emotion. And they're beginning to reprogram their autonomic nervous system. You don't need the sugar pill or the saline injection to combine a clear intention with an elevated emotion. Instead of selecting a known like a pill, select an unknown in the quantum field and keep revisiting it until you biologically make it known. And do it over and over again until you begin to program the gene to begin to express itself. And so I wrote a book called You Are the Placebo. I showed some of the science in there. And then somewhere along the line, we started seeing profoundly different brain scans. I mean, neuroscientists that were coming and studying us during these moments were concerned that our students were having seizures because the amount of energy in their brain was and is dramatic. I mean, we're talking thousands and thousands of times more energy than we typically see in a normal person. And so
they're probably thinking, like, we should take these people to the ER.
Yeah, no. And I have had our brain scientists yell seizure during an event because the person who was getting scanned was a physician from London who connected to that field of information, and her body moved into a state of grace and love that she had never felt in her entire life, and her brain popped, exploded, and they were saying seizure, seizure, and she was thinking, if this is a seizure, I want more of this. We started to realize that when people go from a narrow focus to an open focus, and when they begin to pay attention to that field, they stay present with it, they experience it, they become more aware of it. Moment by moment by moment, there'll come a moment where all of a sudden they'll begin to connect to it. Now, the hormones of stress create separation. There's me here and there's you there, and there's space and distance between us, and then there's me here, and then there's my future and my dreams way over there. And I got to drag my body through space to get to my dreams, and it's going to take time. And that's the world of Newtonian physics. And the more separation we have between 2 points of consciousness, the more distance we have between 2 points of consciousness, the more time it's going to take for me to get there. If I'm in Mexico City and I say I want to get to Dallas and I'm going to walk, well, I'm going to drag my body through space, and it's going to take me a long time to get there. 1 point of consciousness, Mexico City, the other point of consciousness, Dallas. My body moves through space, it takes time. Well, in the quantum, it's kind of opposite, because in this three-dimensional world, there's an infinite amount of space. Space is the commodity, and we experience time moving through space. But in the quantum, there's an infinite amount of time. Time is eternal. And if time is eternal in that realm, imagine if you had all the time in the world. You can get anything done you wanted to, right?
Yes.
It's only equal to your imagination. And so then, as you as a consciousness, as you go from a somebody to a nobody, as someone to no one, from something to nothing, from somewhere to nowhere, from some time to no time, and you become pure consciousness, as our students begin to connect to that field, and they begin to pay attention to it and surrender to it and stay present with it and go deeper into it, their consciousness is moving closer to the consciousness of the unified field. And as you begin to move closer and closer to it, the signature of the unified field is oneness and wholeness, which means you experience less separation and you experience more wholeness. And if you feel more whole, you feel like you already have everything you want. And so you're no longer creating from duality or polarity or lack. And as you get closer and closer to that unified field, there's less separation between 2 points of consciousness, then there's less time, which means it starts happening in a shorter amount of time. So we started doing these week-long events because I realized, boy, after 4 days, people are connecting and having these amazing experiences. What would happen if we had them for a week? And that's what we're starting to see now, instantaneous, miraculous changes. And that's where we're at. I believe in this concept called information, the transformation. I now know, without a doubt, Humberto,
Yes.
if you give people sound scientific information, and science is the contemporary language of mysticism. It is.
Correct.
The science demystifies the mystical. And you combine a little quantum physics with a little neuroscience, a little neuroendocrinology, a little psychoneuroimmunology, a little epigenetics, a little brainwave technology. And people, as they're embracing that information, and it's current. Now, it's not enough to just listen to it, because you learn it, you make new connections in your brain. But then we ask our students to turn to the person next to them and explain it. If you can't explain it, it's not wired in your brain. So then they begin to build a model of understanding, firing and wiring, firing and wiring. And as they begin to make their brain fire in new sequences and new patterns and new combinations, they're changing their mind. Mind is the brain in action. So if we keep reminding them of these models and they can explain it, they're installing the neurological hardware in their brain in preparation for the experience. And the more they understand what they're doing and why, the how gets easier. So then, if I can set up the conditions in the environment immediately right afterwards, and nothing's left to conjecture, nothing's left to superstition, nothing's left to dogma.
Yes.
You understand exactly what you're doing and why. And you give the people the proper instruction and they feel safe enough to do it. And I have 750 people or 1,000 people or 1,500 people, a community of people all doing it at the same time. A certain percentage of those people are going to get their behaviors to match their intentions and their actions equal to their thoughts. And when they do, they're going to have some type of transformation, a change in form. Mm-hmm. Well, if I could measure their transformation like we did, then I have more information to teach transformation the next time. And if I can measure that transformation, I have more information to teach transformation the next time. So all of a sudden you start closing the gap between knowledge and experience. So there's a momentum when you get a community of people together and they're not busy on their cell phones or their computers or taking care of their kids. They are focused, and they're focused on creating a new future. And after looking at 8,000 some odd brain scans, I can tell you that you are at your absolute best when you get beyond yourself, period.
I walk around the streets, everybody smiling. Sun shining bright, so better to be hiding. But you're surrounded, don't forget about it. Long days, loud nights, it's summer. I walk around the streets, everybody smiling. Sun shining bright, so better to be hiding. But you're surrounded, don't forget about it. Long days, loud nights, it's summer.
Quên đi bao câu hứa mình còn cho nhau, quên đi bao nỗi đau mình dành. Ngày xưa em đã vội quên đi những lời hứa ngày nào, vì dòng nước mắt em đã vội rơi, anh không thể bay anh như đến vào điên rồi, anh như say đôi mắt mỏi, anh như chỉ còn muốn em bên cạnh như ở phố xa rồi, anh chỉ muốn em cạnh đấy thôi, không muốn em ở bên đời, chỉ muốn em cạnh bên người. Người đã gỡ bước đi xa trong cơn mưa chiều vội vã, người đã bước quên anh khi cơn mưa qua gần tôi và em đã quên rồi mai sau tay yêu má bé, chẳng còn lại gì những người em bao nước mắt rơi. Em khiến con tim như trôi vai trong chiều thu đầy nắng, em khiến con tim như tan vỡ trong chiều thu mát màng. Vì còn nhiều lắm những gương mặt, nhiều lắm những nỗi vội vàng, nhiều lắm những cơn mưa em mưa ra bây giờ đơn vang không mẹ không mai đứng sang nhờ. Mai em còn đợi đôi mai anh còn người ta xưa ta chúng còn giữ nhau chẳng đi.
by the music.